Morning, everyone. Or for some of you, it's evening. Whatever time it is for you. All right. I'm going to share the slide deck. Beginning, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about this week and introduce the first set of practice problems as a warm-up. So first thing, a little bit of housekeeping. We will practice the exam. We will post the practice exam for exam 1 tonight. The first exam is on Monday, 10 a.m. If you either have a class at 10 a.m. or if 10 a.m. falls between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. in your time zone, you can take the makeup. The makeup is at 9 o'clock on Monday evening. If you haven't submitted the form yet, get online and submit the form. Sarah, if you have the link, you can dig it out of the makeup email, post it on the chat box, and then they can grab it from there to fill it out. On Thursday in class, I'm going to create a brief ExamSoft set of problems. It's not a quiz. It's not a practice exam. It's just to make sure that everyone gets into ExamSoft and does some problems before you're actually taking the exam. So I know that many of you have used ExamSoft before, but the goal of this is just to make sure that everyone is comfortable with it. So find the instructions for putting it on your computer. Make sure that you've installed it before class on Thursday. I sent an email out with the instructions. Tomorrow, I will send out an email telling you that it is ready to download. And it'll just be 4 or 5 problems, and we'll do it in class on Thursday. And if anyone bumps into a problem, we want to find out Thursday. We don't want to find out on Monday. And then the last thing is, so there's a lot of stuff at the very beginning of class that's startup. And we try to sort of spread it out a little bit so you're not hearing it all on the first day of class. So one of the reminders, every day after class, we will post your homework score to Questrom Tools. Once it's posted, you want to go in and look at it and make sure that if you did your homework, it says you did your homework. If it doesn't say you did your homework, there could be one of 2 reasons. One is that we made a mistake, which would be a really good reason to email us. At the very beginning, a few of you, when I went in to check, you had registered for a different My Finance Lab section. We can import those into this section's My Finance Lab. So we just need to get you set up on this section, and then we'll import it from the other section. So if you got one of those emails from me, set it up for A1, we'll move it. In a couple cases, people signed up for FE 101 A1, and you have to do SM 132 A1. So that's not a big deal. We'll move it. So it may be that Sarah can't see your homework because she's only on this site, but we can move it and you'll be all set. So the key thing is that check it, because occasionally either we miss something, or we say you didn't spend 15 minutes on the problem, and when you pull it up, you can show us that you really did, or something like that. So this is the time to make sure everybody understands the instructions. Any questions on that? The best way to deal with questions on that is probably the chat box. I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at you, like exams and homework. Really fun way to start a class, right? Yeah. All right, onward. So the other thing that we're going to introduce today is that, as we said in class on Thursday, there are, in addition to the practice exams, we also have created practice exam problems, and they're all exam problems. And the goal is for you to begin to see the way we ask questions on the exam. The ones that we're going to look at, so today we're actually going to do them at the beginning of class and at the end of class. Usually we'll just do them at the end. There will always be practice exam problems available. Sometimes we don't actually have time to do them in class, but they're a really good way for you to practice. So you should take advantage of them. So what I'm going to do is show you where they are. And this first set of problems is mostly sort of just to give you an idea, to be a way to sort of go back over what we did on Thursday, and it'll probably take you 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to I'm going to show you where they are, and then we will open them up. So give me 1 sec. All right, so if you go to Question Tools, right here it says practice problems posted for each class. While I am here, let me also tell you that this folder that says practice problems for the exams, if you open that folder, you can't see them yet, but this is the practice problems that will be available this evening. So practice problems posted for each class. We're going to make this first one available right now. We're the first section of the day, so we're the ones that get to turn everything on. And when you click on this, what you're going to get is this document right here. So you can either click on it and open it for yourself, or you can just use the fact that I've opened it up on the screen share. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for 5 minutes to look at these, because you'll get more out of it if you do it together. So take a pic, either open this on Question Tools or take a picture with your phone. Either way will work. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If anyone has questions, you can always say help and we'll come help, but we're going to go over them when you get back in. Ryan, did it give you one? Yes. Shunjay, did it give you one? Did it put you in a breakout room? All right. So Catherine had this theory that if I made you a co-host, you weren't going to get put in a breakout room, but apparently you did get put in a breakout room.
When I get
All right, my general impression is that this feels reasonably straightforward to people. At least if I put you in a group, it becomes straightforward. But let me pull it up and use it as a way to kind of tell you the sorts of questions that show up on an exam. And also make sure that if anyone has questions, we talk about them. So I will get this a little bit bigger here. So one of the things that we're doing here is using this as a way to have you sort of remember what some of the vocabulary words are and go back and look at them. So if you look at this first question, that's really what's going on with this question here. So one thing about these is that the answers are on the last page. So come down to the bottom, you see an answer key here. It's on the second page so that you're not seeing it when you first do it. But one of the things about using something like this as a learning tool is that it tends to work a lot better if you can check your answers right away. So we're going to come down here. We're going to look at question 1. It says that it's B. So what this is looking at is law of one price, and that's just one of the things we talked about in the slide deck. So let's use the chat box here to sort of get some answers. What are we trying to do with this question? What are we getting you to think about? Or if the chat box feels tedious, it's okay to just raise your hand and talk. Thank you, Ryan. So you guys are answering privately, which is totally okay, but then I won't say who answered. I'll just say thank you. So yes, you're seeing it. Those of you who are saying something are saying it different ways. What we're trying to deal with here is to get you to focus on the fact that what matters is the market price. So when we looked at valuing things, what the valuation principle says is that for purposes of looking at a cost benefit analysis, you're going to have to use the market price. So we use the market price. It doesn't matter what they were originally purchased for. It doesn't matter what we would use them for. It doesn't, if we're going to, the value is what we can sell them for. So it doesn't matter what it's going to cost to store them. So the value is going to be the $200 per ton times 10 tons equals 2,000. Questions on that? So the real point there is to think about what is this question doing? And as you look at more questions and as you look at practice exams, one of the things you're going to discover is there just aren't that many questions out there. All right, another variation on something like this. What answer did people pick for this one? Put the letter you picked in the chat box. Great, D. So one of the advantages of having you all do that is that if you all totally understand it, you don't really want to listen to me talk about it. So number 4 was just having you practice present value and future value. Yes, absolutely. I can explain, please. We're going to back up to number 3 and talk about number 3. So in this particular case, the net value of buying your sisters is that you can buy it for $150. So your cost is going to be $150. You can sell it for $210. So the net value is $210 minus $150 equals $60. You may, in fact, go out and use that $60 to buy the phone that you want, but that's not part of the net value of buying your sister's phone. that's a cost that you're going to incur separately when you go out to buy it. But buying your sister's phone, you're going to pay $150, you're going to get $210, and you end up with $60. Okay. Interest rate, $4 by the end of class today. We will have talked about how to use the calculators. So you're going to be really good at doing this really fast. But for the moment, we're still dealing with the math. So to take something forward for 1 year, you add the interest rate to what you've already got, and you have $104. Taking it backwards, you use the present value equation. So you take that $100, you divide it by 1.04. So these are the same as that slide we did at the end of class on Thursday. And you get 96.15. So this last question is related to that thing that I did at the very end of class. I mean, it partially was the concept stuff that was on the slide deck at the end of class. But one of the things we talked about is that when you take a look at, so the question is, what is the impact on the present value? So one key thing about exams is it's really important to make sure you know what the question is. So for some people, the best way to make sure you know what the question is to read the last line first, so you don't get sort of absorbed in the paragraph. So if the present value equation, here it is. So what we're talking about here is that the interest rate increases. There's our interest rate right there. So if the denominator increases, what happens to our present value? Go ahead and type it into the chat box. Exactly. All right. So this is admittedly a little easy because we've only had one class, but it sort of introduces you to these concepts, and it's also a good way of sort of warming you up and getting you started with class. So I will shut this and we will move on to what we're going to do today. So what we're doing today, I'm going to pull up the I'll pull up the slide deck so you have the visual while I'm talking about it. What we're going to be doing today is expanding what we did in two different directions. One is that everything we've done so far was looking at the present value and the future value when it was either 1 year in the past or 1 year in the future. Now what we're going to do is we're going to expand that to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 50 years in the past or 50 years in the future. So now we're saying it doesn't have to be just 1 year. It can be as many years as you want to analyze. The other thing is that we're going to look at what happens when there's more than one cash flow. What happens if you find out that you're going to get $10 next year and $20 in 2 years and $30 in 3 years? And you can take the present value of each one of those numbers and add them together and figure out how much you're going to have today. If we keep using the gold and silver example as a comparison, if we had changed that problem so that one person was going to give you 20 ounces of gold and another person would give you 30 and another one would give you 40, you would end up with 90 ounces of gold. So if we end up with cash at 3 different periods of time, we can add up the present value of all of those, and that's going to be how much we have. And then finally, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to the calculator so that you can start doing these more quickly. So whether you actually have the calculator, the physical calculator, or got it on your phone, you're going to use them the same way. If you ended up getting a different calculator because you couldn't get this one or you borrowed one, that's fine. You'll need to get the instruction manual to compare how to use it. So that's the plan for today. There are a number of places in this plan where we're going to have time to do problems and make sure it's all making sense. Okay, so this problem is intended to take a 1 year situation, and we're going to make sure everybody understands the timeline, and then I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for 3 minutes to do it. But we're going to focus on the timeline first. A sort of an important tool to get comfortable using, and it's a lot of people sort of say, I hate timelines. It's like showing my work. I know. But when you use a timeline, you make sure you really understand what something looks like. So what we're going to do here is figure out what's happening with this and put it on a timeline, and then I'll have you all work together to solve it. So we have a choice. We're not going to get both of these things. We're going to have to choose between them, and we want to pick the one that's the most value. So we have 400 pounds of cheese. And the choice is that we can sell it today or sell it in a year. If we sell it today, we're going to sell it today. We're going to sell it for $7 a pound. If you sell it for a year, now what's going to happen is that you get to sell it for 10% more. So 10% more than $7. You're going to get more money when you sell your cheese, but you also have to pay $200 in order to get it out of the caves. And that $200 is a year from now. It has to be a year from now because you're aging it in these caves, and the cost is to get it out of the caves. So the cost isn't going to happen until you take it out of the caves in a year. So what you're going to do is find the present value of both choices and compare them. So now that I've kind of laid it out for you, it's a relatively quick problem. So take a picture of it with your phone so you have it. And I'm going to make this a 2-minute breakout room. One unassigned. Oh, it didn't put you in one. There's only 2 people in room 2, so I'll send you there. They're probably lonely. And I just realized I did you guys in and I didn't start the recorder again. So that's what I did to section A3 on Thursday. So when I post the videos, I won't post this one because it's missing a big piece, but we do the exact same thing in all 3 classes. So it doesn't really make sense to post 3 of the same thing every day anyway. So on Thursday, it was A1 and A2. Today, it'll be A2 and A3. Unless I do the same thing again. When you get a number, put it in the chat box. Yep. So the first thing I will do is take you to the slide that shows you the formula. And some of you may have ended up with some rounding in there. For the moment, don't worry about that. On the exam, what we're going to tell you is to do the problems. All the steps in between go to 4 digits after the decimal, and that will make sure that you're okay on rounding for the exam. Most of this exam is problems that you're going to do in the calculator, and you're probably all going to get the exact same answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm not, change this so you can see my screen better. There we go. What I'm going to teach you first is how to use the exponent button and how to get the 1.06 to the 10th power down into the denominator. After we do the next problem, I'm also going to show you how to use these keys across the top. But what I want to make sure is you know how to do equations. So the best way to do this equation is to start right here. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to take 1.06 and then over here underneath the times button, I'm not using my, there we go, right here. There's a red, it's in red, it says y to the x. So what you want to do is hit the orange shift key and then y to the x and then 10. And you should get 1.79085. Now we need to get that number down into the denominator. So what we're going to do is underneath the dividing button, there's something that says 1 over x, the reciprocal sign. So again, orange, 1 over x. That now put the 1.79 down into the denominator. So you should have 0.55839. And now you can just multiply that by 15,000. So I'm going to say that again because the first time I say it, it's kind of like, wait a minute, what are you even doing here? So now I'll do it again since you know where I was headed. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 1.06 orange y to the x 10 equals, then we're going to put it in the denominator, orange 1 over x, and then we're going to multiply that by 15,000. And there will be problems. I mean, yes, we're going to learn how to do those really quickly with the calculator later today, but there's going to be problems where you actually need to use the calculator. So beginning to get good at doing that now while we're doing simpler problems is good. It'll just make you faster and more accurate with the calculator. All right. So there's also this point at the bottom. We've been doing math, but it's worth less today because the present value is discounted. As we go all the way out to the 10th year, we're going to earn interest, and that 15,000 is going to be a lot higher than the 8375. All right, I'm going to have you do one more problem, and then I'm going to teach you how to use the keys on the calculator. Yes, I'm going to do it again. Somebody suggested if I turn off the screen share, it would work better. I actually have another idea. I'm going to put a calculator on the screen, and then I can circle what we're doing, and that might even work better. While you do this, I'm going to get the calculator organized. Okay, go ahead and type a number in, and then I'm going to switch the screen share to a calculator so you can look at the calculator. Yep. So first of all, here's your number. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the calculator and show you how to do that. So here's a picture of a calculator right here. And if we were trying to do that problem, which was 2 million divided by 1.04 to the 5th power, what we're going to do is we're going to start by getting this number. So do 1.04 and then use this orange shift key and this y to the x right there. So orange shift, y to the x, and then say 5. And you're going to get 1.21665. I'm going to do this 2 ways for you. Then we're going to use this 1 over x right here. So do orange shift again and 1 over x. And you'll have 0.82193. And then you can multiply that by 2,000, 2 million. So the other thing I'm going to do is switch the screen share to this calculator. So everybody see a calculator that I just pulled up here? So I'm going to do it here so you can watch. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 1.04, orange shift key, y to the x, 5 equals, there's your 1.21665. Then we need to put it in the denominator. So orange 1 over x equals, there's your 0.82193. Multiply that times 2 million. And there you go. All right, so what I'm going to do is take us back to the slide deck for about 10 minutes and show you how the calculator works to do the present value and future value for you, and then give you a break. Let me clean up the scribbles that I put on that before I do that. So it's actually the point I would normally give you a break now, except you'll be better off learning to do the calculator first. All right. Get us to the beginning of it. So here's your calculator. And the key thing at the beginning is that you need to get it set up right. So if you bought the app, same instructions on the app. And once you set it on the app, as long as you don't reboot your phone, it'll stay set like this. So we'll talk about how you notice if it's changed after we learn how to use it. So the first thing you need to do is learn how to clear your calculator. So why is it not working? There we go. So this shift key for everything we do, we're using the orange shift key. The blue stuff, you're not going to use. So you hit the orange shift key and then you hit this clear all button down there. So you need to do orange clear all because there's registers in the calculator that are being used to save information when you do the financial calculations. If you don't clear those registers, you're going to end up with the wrong answers. So critical thing is always hit orange clear all before you do another problem. And when you do it, look up in the screen at the top and see what it says. So for those of you who have just started using your calculator, it says 12 payments a year. That's how they come. So the first thing we're going to do is show you how to change it to 1 payment a year. So if you do 12 payments a year, you're going to get the wrong answer. So what you do is you hit 1, then the orange shift key, and then up here at the top, the orange underneath payment says payment per year. And now if you do orange clear all again, it's going to say 1 payment a year. So then the next slide here is the help. I don't like the way it looks. It looks wrong. Something's wrong with it. How do I fix it? So this is dealing with things like I need more digits. It just put it in exponential notation and I hate it, things like that. So the first thing we're going to do is show you how to get the number of digits after the decimal point. So for this course, I would recommend that you do 5 or 6 digits after the decimal point. So what you're going to do is orange, display, and then whatever number you type after you click this orange display button down here, that's going to change the number of digits after the decimal point. So if you think about different countries, how they show currency, and for US dollars, the way we write them tends to be 5,000.00. That's $5,000. But there are some countries that the way you would write that is 5,000,000,00. And this thing down here, we'll toggle it back and forth between those two things. So if you prefer it to be the other way, what you do is orange, and then click that button down there, and it'll change it back and forth. You're looking at the same number. It's not changing what the number is. It's not changing the way it does the math. So for some of you, that's what you do to get it the way you want it to be. Don't put it that way into my finance lab because my finance lab won't recognize it. For others of you, the reason that you need to know this is that you take your calculator out and it's backwards and you're like, whoa, this looks weird. That's how you change it to what you're used to. That's how you change it back and forth. Scientific notation, another thing that some people like and a lot of people see it and they want to get rid of it. So if you want it, what you do is you do the orange and then you do display, but then instead of hitting a number, you hit the period, and that'll give you scientific notation. If what's happened is that you have scientific notation and you want to get rid of it, you just go back and do this again, and it'll reset it to the way you had it. So when I first made this slide, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I was quickly finishing it up in my office before I went to teach my class. And I came running out of my office and said, I just made a slide to show my students how to fix their calculator screens. And 4 people popped their heads out and said, can you give us that slide, please? So this is like just one of those things that everybody needs to like know how to fix these things. So that's how you fix it. And this will work on the app as well. If you are, because I know a few people, I know there are some countries you can't get this calculator and you've borrowed calculators from friends. You just need to find that they will all eventually do the same thing, but the specific directions to do it might be a little bit different. So you might have to find the manual. All right, so now we're going to look at how do we do these problems using these keys across the top. So this key we're not going to deal with until after the exam. But the other 4 keys we're going to talk about today. So this N is N. The formulas that we've been looking at, if I put our present value formula here, N is N. Interest per year is R. So that's R. Present value is whatever it is today. Future value is the number in the future that is N years away. So if you've got a present value formula, the C is the number in the future. If you have the future value formula, that was the present value. So that's how the calculator is going to work. So if we go back to that last problem that we did, present value of a cash flow at 2 million in 5 years. So the one that the answer was that the way we did it was present value equals 2 million over 1.04 to the 5th power. So the way you're going to do it, so the first thing to do is clear your calculator. So orange, clear all. Make sure it says 1 payment a year. Now 5 and hit N. That's that number right there. 4 and hit interest. Doesn't actually matter which order you do this in. There's your interest right there. 2 million is the number that we're going to get in the future. You can ignore this, or you can put 0 in for payment and then press present value. So now that we've introduced this, whenever we do problems, what's going to happen is that there'll be this chart. And the chart will show you, oops, sorry about that. Stop it. My mouse is taking over. Okay. The chart is going to show you the inputs. So there are the keys across the top of your calculator. The one you're solving for is yellow. I talked to you about inflows and outflows. So in this case, we treated it as if we were going to get 2 million in the future. So the amount that we would invest would be an outflow in the present. And the issue here is that this is just the way your calculator works. Many of these slides, we have an additional bar down here that has the Excel formula. So Excel will do these problems. They don't always do them exactly the same way that the HP calculator does them. So you need to kind of pay attention to the differences. But so for example, when you're using the calculator, if the interest is 4%, in our calculator, you put that in as 4. In Excel, you put it in as 0.04. So we won't be doing Excel in this class, but if you want to learn how to do it, absolutely. If you want to use it to do my finance lab, that's fine too. So what I'm going to do here, it is 9:45. I'm going to give you, and I'm going to make this whole thing visible so you can practice. I'm going to give you a 15-minute break. So take a few minutes to do this and then take a real break. We've been going for an hour and 15 minutes. We probably will go for most of the period today. So you really need to sort of get up, walk around, get outside, do something, seriously. So do this and then go ahead and mute yourselves when you're done. And we will start up again at 11 o'clock. I'm going to turn off the recorder so it actually feels like a break. There's a, my mouse is taking over the world here. So the questions that are at the bottom here are similar to the question that we talked about at the end of class on Thursday. And so if we're looking at present value, the present value equation, 1 plus R, C over 1 plus R to the N. So one of the things I talked about is when interest rates get higher, present value gets lower. When N gets higher, so if the cash is farther away, if cash is 10 years from now instead of 5 years from now, N is higher, present value is lower. So if we look at these numbers, the way I set this up is we have a pair of 10 years that are two different interest rates. So 10 years at 8% is a lower present value than 10 years at 4%. If interest rates are higher, present value is lower. We also have a pair of 8% where one is 5 years and one is 10 years. When N is bigger, 10 years has a lower present value than the same amount at the same interest rate that's only 5 years away. So the longer that we're going to wait before we get the money, the lower the present value today. When you ask the same questions about future value, if you're earning a higher interest rate, you're going to have more in the future. If you leave it in the bank longer, you're going to have more in the future. So if we take our two 10-year ones, the higher interest rate gives us a higher amount. If we take our two 6%, leave it longer, you have the higher amount. All right, so this is a concept one. So the interest is going to be 3%. You're going to receive this amount. So if you're receiving it, you want your present value to be as big as possible. So which of these has the biggest present value today? So put the number in the chat box when you know what it is. Yep, to the ones I've seen so far. So one thing this lets you do is practice your calculators, but it's also making sure that you pay attention to what's the question that's being asked. So the slide before, we just said, what's the present value? Here we asked you a question that you had to think about the question to get at it right. So the 1580 in 5 years, present value is 1363. That's going to be the highest one. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at what happens if we combine cash flows in the future. So I'm going to look at this summary, and then I'm going to give you a worksheet to work on for about 10 minutes together, and then we'll talk about what it means and build on it. So first of all, summary. These are the same 3 rules that were on 3 different slides earlier today. If we're going to compare things or combine them, we have to find the value at the same time. To find it today, we use the present value equation. To find it in the future, you use the future value equation. So what I'm going to have you do, and this is on Questrom Tools, so I'll show you where it is on Questrom Tools. Questrom Tools is being slow. So if you go to Questrom Tools and you go to, nope, sorry, wrong one. I have too many slides open here. There we go. So if you go to Questrom Tools, go to the resources area, come to this folder that says worksheets, and there's only one that you're going to be able to see. So when you open this one right there, what you're going to get, so you're going to be able to all take this into, you're going to get a worksheet that has a timeline on it. And the idea here is that you are going to play around with what are things worth at different points in time. So the first part of it is going to have you say, okay, here's a number. What's it worth 3 years from now? What's it worth today? It's sort of pointing out that you can move a number to any point in time. If you're moving it earlier, you're going to use the present value. If you're moving it later, you're going to use the future value. And then the second one is going to combine 2 numbers. So you're going to find the combined number at 2 different points in time. So I'm going to have you work again in groups of 3 or 4. Open up that document. Everybody see where that document is? Everybody got it open? Cool. So I'm going to put you in the groups. I'm going to put you in the groups for about 10 minutes. If anyone is running into trouble, you know you can ask for help from the groups, right? So I like to sort of let you work on your own because it gives you time to just kind of relax and not have faculty there. But I want to make sure that when you're doing something, if you need help, you can get it. So if you finish early, come back. If a whole bunch of people come back faster than 10 minutes, I'm going to assume that everyone's done. But usually when we do this in the classroom, it takes somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. So everybody came back more quickly this time, which makes me think you were pretty much done. Or bored, one or the other. So I'm going to pull this up. All right, I think we got everybody back. Yep, all right. So there were two pieces of this that were meant to illustrate different things. And as we're doing it, if you bump into things you had questions about, just type them in. So the idea was that you had $5,000 at time 4 on this timeline. And the question is, what is the value today? So the value today is going to be times 0. What is the value in 4 years? So 4 years is when you get the money. So the value in 4 years is exactly $5,000. And finally, the value in 6 years is right here. So if we're starting with $5,000 at year 4, if we want to go to times 0, that's going to be present value where n equals 4. So n equals 4 for all of these. R is going to be 4%. The future value will be 5,000, and you solve for present value. To look at 6 years, we're going to go 2 years into the future. So that's going to be solving for future value where n equals 2. R is still 4. Present value is 5,000. And we solve for future value. So the first thing we were doing was saying, you can move these numbers around. We could have said, what's the value at year 2? That would be the present value where n equals 2. So you can, given receiving $5,000 at time 4, you can find the value of that at any point by using either the future value equation to move it after year 4, or the present value equation to move it before year 4. So then what we did in the second half was begin to have you look at what happens if we combine two numbers. So what's happening very consciously here is that we're doing what is called an inductive approach to learning. You're experimenting, you're exploring it, you're finding it, and then we're going to get onto the slides and reinforce what you did. So anytime that you're adding two numbers, you're going to add the values, but you have to add them at the same point in time. So the first one, the value today, we're going to have to take 6,000 back 3 years, 5,000 back 4 years, and add those two numbers together and get the sum of them. So in that particular case, what you would do, now one of the things about this problem is that we've already got some of the numbers. We already know what the value of the 5,000 is today. So that is 4274 plus the value of the 6,000 today is 53334. Add those together, and there's rounding in there that I'm sort of ignoring here, and you get 9607. So before we move on from this, I'm going to walk through all of these, but then I'm going to show you other ways to think about this. But let's start with just kind of doing it this way. So if we want to know the value in 3 years, the value of the 6,000 in 3 years is 6,000. The 5,000, we only have to move back 1 year. $4,808. Add those two together, you'll get $10,808. For the value of the 5,000 we've already got, and we're going to move the 6,000 1 year forward. $6,240, and you'll get $11,240. And then finally, the last one for 6 years, we'll have to move the 5,000 forward 2, which we've already done. The 6,000 forward 3. So future value 3 years later, present value 6, and 2 are 4. $6,489. Hold on. Not getting the right number there. Hold on. That should be 3. 12,157. So did everybody get those numbers? Or you didn't get them in the breakout rooms? Do you have them now? I'm watching sort of heads nodding. Okay. So the other thing I'm going to point out to you here is that the way that I just did them was to find the individual values. There are other things that you could do. So for example, we took this 5,000 back to here and found the value at year 3. The combined value is 10,808 at year 3. One of the things that we could have done is said, okay, the combined value at time 0 is the present value of 10,808 3 years earlier. So try that. Put future value 10,808, N is 3, R is 4, and solve for present value. And you should get 9,607. So part of what I'm showing you is that once you combine things on a timeline, you can move them anywhere. You can either add them up separately or you could move them. So another way that you could have done this problem would have been to find that 9,607 at time 0, and then just all 3 of the other numbers would be the future value of 9,607 at different points in time. So for those of you who didn't get 9,607, if you got 9,608, it's rounding. If you got something totally different, let's check it. I'm looking at a couple of. So we will talk about rounding after you do the practice stuff on Thursday in ExamSoft. But the way ExamSoft works is we actually go in and check for rounding errors. So it's not a problem if you don't get exactly the number that we put in there. We create more space than my finance lab does. All right, let me troubleshoot. Actually, give me a second. I just sent a couple of you a message. If you weren't getting the right thing in your calculator, send it to Sarah and work through with her what you were doing. All right, back to the slide deck. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use the slide deck to walk through the process of what you all kind of intuitively found out how to do while you were in the breakout rooms. So what we're going to do is we're going to take something that's similar to what that looked like and say, we're going to have, so if we give ourselves a timeline, we're going to save $1,000 today. And at the end of the next 2 years, so next year, at the end of it, we're going to save another 1,000. And at the end of that, we're going to save another 1,000. So we have 3 $1,000 amounts today, time 1 and time 2. And we're going to say, how much are we going to have, would we have 3 years from today? So future value at time 3. And how much do we have today? So there's several different ways to think about this that echo what I was showing you on that timeline. But one critical thing to point out here is when you look at these problems, it's really important to pay attention to what it's asking you. So the question is, how much are we going to have at time 3? So make sure that when we do it, we bring everything all the way out to time 3. So one thing that we could do is we could look at what's happening in our bank account. So we put the $1,000 in the bank account. We earn 10% on it. It grows to $1,100. We put another 1,000 in our bank account. Now we have $2,100. Earn 10% on that. The $2,100 has now grown to $2,310. We put $1,000 in. We have $3,310. The question was year 3. Earn 10% on that. We get to $3,641. The other thing that we could do is do each one of them separately. So that's kind of like the 2 different ways that I played around with that timeline with you. We could say, what's the value of $1,000 in 3 years? The 1,000 that comes in at time 1 is going 2 years forward. So that 1,000 in 2 years, so this is n equals 3. This is n equals 2. And this one that we put in at year 2 is only going forward 1 year. Add them all up, we get the same number. So you can do it either way. You're going to get the same answer. If you're doing the present value, we can take the present value. You could move them all back 1 by 1, or you can take this back 1 year, this back 2 years. In this case, the first payment was at time 0, so we don't have to do anything with that one. Add them all together, and you get 27, 35, 54. And by this time, because we've been playing around with this, you all probably already know, but we will find out, what the relationship is between that 27, 35, 54, that's the present value of all those numbers today, and the 3641, that was the future value that we found at year 3. So go ahead and put this in your calculator as the present value, and let's see what the future value is 3 years later. So n equals 3, I equals 10, and solve for future value. Everybody get 3641 or something relatively close? At this point, we're rounding things enough that they're, the ones I'm seeing, I think are all close enough. One of them I should check and make sure it's not a calculator problem. Yeah, those are all fine. So if you took the 2735.54 and found the future value of it, there's your 3641. So adding a bunch of numbers and finding the present value, adding up the present value of all the numbers, adding up the future value of all the numbers, the relationship between those two answers is going to be the present value and future value of each other. So what we're going to do is do a problem with this. And the critical thing to understand here before you do the problem is that you have an uncle. He's going to lend you the money to buy a new car as long as you pay him back. And from his perspective, he's willing to lend you the amount of money that would be the exact same value to him as if he kept the money and put it in his savings account. So you can either do that by saying that he's going to lend you the present value of what you're going to pay him in the future. And then what we can do is test that and say, okay, let's imagine that he put the money in his savings account. Does he really end up with the same amount of money? So we're going to do one more 3-minute breakout room today. So take a picture of this with your phone. And what you're trying to find out is the present value of these payments where interest is 6%. So last breakout room for the day. I'm going to set the timer on my watch for 3 minutes. The interesting thing about the fact that Zoom sort of keeps the same breakout rooms is that over the course of a class, you start realizing which ones finish quickly and which ones kind of stay together.
Yeah.
So when you close it, it gives you a minute before it actually closes them. So people that are done come right back and people who aren't done kind of hang out.
exactly.
Breakout room 4 is good workers. I feel bad bringing you guys back. All right, let me put the number that you're looking for is this number. So before we talk about it, check whatever you wrote down and see if that's what you came up with. So a key concept here is that if these are the cash flows, your Uncle Henry doesn't care whether he has the present value of those amounts or the individual amounts. And the reason is because he could take each of those amounts, put it in the bank at 6%, and over time, by the end of 4 years, he would have 31, 423, 88. Or instead of lending you the money, he could just put the 24, 890 in for 4 years and have that amount of money. So part of what we're introducing here is that you would be indifferent between having 31. So it's not that your Uncle Henry is nice. It's just that it really makes no difference. At 6%, the value of keeping his 31, 423 or getting those 3 payments from you is exactly the same. So what we're going to do before we finish up is introduce you to one more thing. So these have the same value to your Uncle Henry. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce one more thing on the calculator that's going to show you a faster way that you could do something that involves a bunch of different numbers, because you'll be able to practice it on your My Finance Lab assignment for Thursday. So I'm going to walk you through this, but most of what we do on Thursday is going to be working with this concept. So don't worry too much about absorbing the concept. The important reason for doing it today is that having access to this one more key on your calculator is going to let you start using it, and it will be more efficient. But we're going to explain what it means. So what we're going to be doing is there is a key on your calculator that says NPV. It's up here in the second row, and it's orange. So you have to look at the orange letters there. And what it is net present value. So way back when we were, like one class ago, when we were just talking about cost benefit, what we said was that the net value was the value of the benefits minus the costs. When those benefits and costs happen at different times, in order to find the net value, we need to bring them all to the same point in time. So we can find a net present value and compare all of them. So I have my iPad on and it thinks I'm talking to Siri instead of talking to you guys. So a simple version of that, and again, what we're doing here is just making sure you understand why it's called net present value. We're going to expand this more on Thursday. So if you were going to give up 500 today, there's your cost, 500, and you're going to receive 550 in 1 year, your benefit is 550. But in order to compare them, because they're at 2 different times, we have to find the present value of the benefit. So the present value of the benefit is 509.26. So the net of the present value of the benefits minus the present value of the costs is $9.26. And what we call that is net present value. Now, the reason for introducing it now is that it's going to give you access to a really good way to do problems. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to use the, give me a second. I'm going to show you where this key is on the next page and then come back. So where the net present value key is right here. It's orange, so you need the orange shift key. There's another key that's right here that says CFJ. So find those two keys on your calculators. And then we're going to go back to this other page. All right. So if we were trying to find the total, the sum of all of those numbers, and we were going to do it using the formula, you would have to do the present value of each of them separately and add them all up, which it's 9 numbers. It's going to take a really long time. But there's a simpler way to do it. So the first thing we're going to do is have you actually do that. So clear your calculators. Orange, clear all. Get everything out of the memory registers. And now, starting with the, so when you use this key on this calculator, we always start with times 0. So put 0 and hit the CFJ key. 25 and hit the CFJ key. 30 and hit the CFJ key. 25, hit the CFJ key. I'll let you do the rest of them without me saying them all out loud. And then the next thing is we've just put all the numbers in. The calculator is figuring out n from the order that you put them in. So you don't need an n, but we do need an interest. So put 5% into your interest key. And then hit the orange shift button and NPV, and you should get 185.69. Which is a whole lot faster than the other way of doing it, right? So what I'm going to show you is that because of the way the calculator works, we could have actually done the Uncle Henry car loan problem using those keys. So I've copied the problem here so you can see it on the screen. Those were the cash flows that are going to go in our CFJ key. 6% was the interest. So we're going to have to start the first cash flow we're giving him is at time 1. We're not giving him anything at time 0. So we have to put a 0 at time 0. So enter those cash flows. Six is your interest. Hit the orange button and the NPV button, and you should get the same number that you got with the Uncle Henry problem. If you didn't get that, you might not have cleared your calculator between the two problems. So we are at 5 minutes to 11. I'm going to wrap us up, but I'm going to stay on afterwards in case anybody is still trying to figure out how to make some of these things work. Let me just show you 2 things before I wrap us up. So one is, this is less important to tell you when you're all scattered around the world and you kind of know you have to figure out how to use it. The other thing is that because exam is open book. You can always go find these slides, although if you spend time looking for the slides for how to use a calculator, you probably won't be able to finish all the problems, but we'll talk more about the exam on Thursday. And then the other thing is that I will now post this next set of review problems. So give me 1 second to open those up. And then we will finish up. Second to get them opened and point out a couple things to you and let everybody wrap up. All right, when you open those up, what you're going to find is that they're problems that involve cost-benefit type things with the cash flows at different points in time. So it's taking these timelines and expanding them into 2 different periods of time. This paper company problem is actually the same as the cheese problem. It's what we wrote the cheese problem from, so it's a similar problem. This is a basic present value problem. This is a problem that's very similar to the worksheet that we just did. And this is a concept problem. So take a look at those before Thursday. If you have questions about them, we'll talk about them at the end of the day. I mean, at the beginning of class on Thursday. And what we will do on Thursday is spend the first part of class exploring net present value a lot more. But go ahead and use that CFJ key as a way of doing some of the homework so you get used to using it, because it's a skill in itself. And then the other thing we will do on Thursday is use the last part of class for anyone that has questions from the practice exam. We're going to post the practice exam tonight. Be aware of the fact that because the exam includes net present value stuff, you're not going to be able to do everything on the exam until we finish up class on Thursday, but we wanted you to have more time with the practice exam. So that's always sort of a trade-off in the summer. So it's 11 o'clock, or almost 11 o'clock. So we will end up here